Hey everybody, just want to show you what we're doing this year. It's February 20th, 2020. The summer of 2019 in Minnesota was very rainy and we weren't able to get our hay put up like we normally do. Normally we can get 2 cuttings of hay. This year we were lucky to get 1, and the hay we did get was poor quality. So to feed our cattle through the winter, I had a neighbor that talked me into looking for silage. He's an old dairy farmer. So I went on Craigslist and I found a guy 30 miles away from us that was selling silage for $50 a ton. I had never fed silage before. I was pretty scared. I was afraid of spoilage. But the gentleman we bought the silage from assured me that if I laid the silage in lifts and salted it with mixing salt, that it would stay. And so far, so good. So what I did is I put in 6-inch lifts with the skid steer. I built this silage bunk out of round bales, brought in 6-inch lifts, packed it with the skid loader. And every lift I spread with a seeder, about 20 pounds of mixing salt, and then continued. I got this pit to be about 3.5 to 4 feet high, and so far so good. The cattle have been loving it. Then my second problem was I didn't know how much to feed. I went online, I looked and I looked and I looked, and they keep talking about pounds of silage per pound of cattle, and well, I don't think all silage is made equal. This silage has got a lot of dry matter in it. So what we did is I just started feeding a little bit more and a little bit more each day to get their stomachs used to it. And then I started backing off when they had silage left over from the day before. You can see that round bale ring back there. That's what's left of the round bale from these 7 calves. And these calves go anywhere from 350 pounds to probably 900 to 1,000 pounds. And that's what they've eaten off of that bale in the last 6 weeks. They love the silage. I do have a problem with these guys standing in this tire feeder. We weren't set up for silage in any way, shape, or form. So I had to start acting fast on how we were going to make this work. So here I had a couple of those cheap plastic feeders from Tractor Supply, and each one of those handles a skid steer bucket full of silage. The other problem I was having was I had to drive in and out of here numerous times to feed silage, and the cows kept wanting to get out, so I had to get on and off the skid steer. So I came up with this little spring idea. I've got some better ones ordered, but they're not here yet. But this actually works pretty well. I just bump it with the skid steer. I just bump the gate with the skid steer, and it slowly shuts itself. And I've got a spring on each side, and it'll just stop right there. And I can drive in and dump my silage and come back out and not have to get in and out of the skid steer. Another problem we were having is we have a mixed herd of Highlanders and Galloways, and we've got a mini Hereford, and we've got all kinds of crosses of animals, a jumbled up mess. And these horn cattle, they get pretty aggressive around the feeder. So I had to start feeding these cattle with quite a bit of a separation in between them. So I've got those 2 feeders there. A couple of calves. And then what I do out here is I've got my bale rings, and I'll put the hay in there. And when I get the bale hay down a little bit, I dump the silage on top of the hay. Now this is poor quality hay. It was I was baling ditches. We were so desperate this year, so this is like some reed grass and stuff out of the ditches. But I pour the silage on top of that. It seems to keep the bale ring in place. They seem to do a good job. It kind of tricks them into eating some of the poorer quality hay. A neighbor of mine, the same neighbor that told me to get the silage, he borrowed me a couple of those tire feeders. You saw the one with the calves, and I also have another one here. Those work pretty good, but they're small, so feeding horned cattle around there, you can only get a couple cows with horns around them, and that's if they get along. Now, how much did I decide to feed? This herd of 15 cows and 1 bull, I put in 4, I would say, light buckets in the skid loader of silage a day. I feed them at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You can see the silage scattered out over the top of the hay. I feed them at noon or 2 o'clock, and they right away kind of go into a feeding frenzy, and then they calm down. So what I did is I waited, like I said before, I would feed them enough until I saw they had a little bit left over from the day before, and then I backed off a little bit. So they were up to 5 skid steer buckets a day, and now I think I hit the sweet spot with 4 light skid steer buckets in a day. This is a really good alternative for hay when you're in a pinch. I would much rather prefer having high quality hay and only having to fire up equipment twice a week and put out a bunch of bales, but that wasn't an option this year. Normally we go through 160 bales. We try to have 200 on hand, so in the spring we can sell some hay when the prices are high. But this year we're going to be the people that are going to be searching for hay. Right now in Minnesota, I would say on average a 4x5 bale that's 1,000 pounds is going for around $100, and that would be just average grass hay. I've seen them up as high as 150. So this is the way we do it now, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.